Hi everyone, how are you?
Hi there, Nick. I'm good, thank you. This is Kelly.
Hi Kelly, how are you?
Good, thank you.
That's good. I've got someone else and I'm not sure who it is.
I think that's Mel. That's
Mel. Yeah, it probably is that. It looks like it should be. Could be.
Student, teacher code, sorry.
That's all good. Now you're welcome to join me via video, but you don't have to if you just want to have a listen in or ask me any questions. Totally up to you.
Oh, all good. Oh, it doesn't matter. My dog's hanging around behind me. Hello, there you go.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
That's good. Is Mel? I haven't got any video audio of Mel yet either, so I don't know if she's.
I'm not sure. Is it just us two in this session?
Oh, look, it's whoever turns up, basically. If no one turns up, I talk to myself and share what I think will be useful. If not, we'll have a conversation, and I've got some thoughts, things that might be useful, but absolutely needs to go. It goes where it needs to go. That's useful or helpful for you. So, as I say, some bits I've pulled out that I think might be helpful to talk about, but this is very much, what would be useful for you? Mel, if you can hear me, I'm hoping you can actually send a message. Oh, there we go. Made it. Well done. Can't hear you yet. So once you get used to it, it's dead easy, but until you've used it, down the bottom left. No, don't worry. Don't worry. You found where the chat box is. So if you want to ask me any questions, then please do. And I'm going to record this, and again, I hope that's okay, because it might be stuff that's useful for you to go back to for other people. Things might emerge that are useful or helpful as part of it. So as I say, very much this is guided by you, and I'm happy to take it anywhere that's useful. So are there any questions, I guess, you have, or any stuff that you wanted to bring up for us to explore?
I think for me, just the first thing is with the course. My understanding is with the course 1, there's 5 modules. Are there readings or things in between each of these sessions that we should be completing?
So if it's not pointed out, so if it depends which one you're doing. So if it's Myriad of Leadership Conversation, there's I think it's about $10. So there's only a short book that you can access. If not, I'll send you the link to all of that. Okay. If it's, and it sort of made this an open one, next level conversations, there isn't really as such. It is very practically based.
Okay.
There's stuff, information there. And again, I can't remember what's in it. So that shows a good thing. I need to go back and have a look. But if anything emerges and you say, oh, have you got more information on this, or I'd like to explore that, then I can I'll have that somewhere and I can send it your way if it's useful or helpful. Hi, Yolanda. We can hear you now, Mel, I think.
Yes, I'm up and running.
Well done. Well done. Hey. Is your microphone working, Yolanda? Yes, I think it is.
Can we hear?
So is it? Yeah, great. So look, as I say, this is not, this is to add value to what's there. And as you say, it's sort of a week by week course, but you can do it in as short or as long a time as you want. There's no sort of fixed bit. And that's some courses I've run on this have got sort of deliberate start, middle and end with this. But with these, because I think people will access them in very different ways, the idea is I'll let you know each time I do a monthly webinar. And we'll just go wherever is useful or helpful to go. So I say additional information. If you've got any questions, either email me or you can stick it in the comments box. Yeah, and that comes through to me. And if I don't know or I haven't got it, I'll track things down. But usually I've got a whole range of stuff that I think is helpful and useful. So which course are each of you doing? Just to give me a sense of which one it is. It's not a test, but.
Well, I was signed up for the Next Level Leadership Conversations.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's number 1, I imagine. And
Yolanda, you're the same, are you? I can't hear you at the moment for some reason. bottom left, it'll give you a choice of what the audio is. So Melly, is yours?
I'm on the second one, so I'm
Yeah.
part of the second one. I'm just trying to sort my computer out.
All good, all good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm on the second one. So
Cool.
similar questions to what Kelly had.
Yeah. So there is on that one, and then, I'll send you the link to it anyway. It's an ebook. You can. Well, I think the ebook's about $6 or $7. You can do a hard copy one, which is about $10. But I'll send you the link to that. As I say, the Myriad one is deliberately based around. And it's only a short book. It's just some extra reading stuff as part of that. But obviously, it'll reference and is potentially a useful resource. And very much where both of these emerge from, slightly different. They both emerge from the same perspective around there is more to conversations and coaching. Okay, so I think coaching is a great place to end up if the person wants to be coached. The danger is we try and coach people and they don't want to be coached. It's incredibly frustrating for you if you're trying to coach them, and for them if they don't want to be coached. So it was about, okay, how do we have impactful conversations as much of the time as possible? All right, because we can't fit in any more conversations. You're already flat out having loads and loads of conversations. How do we get the most out of, and it won't be every conversation, but as many conversations as possible. And I talk very much about closing the gap between intention and impact. So whenever we go into conversations, or virtually anyone who goes into a conversation in the school environment, I believe my experience is wants to have has a positive intention. All right, but the impact, I'm sure you can all remember times when you've been on the receiving end of a conversation that might not be, hasn't been well received because it's some feedback or something has emerged that sort of can be a bit confronting. And potentially you've had conversations with colleagues that sort of missed its mark. So these are about how do we help close the gap between intention and impact? Because there's a whole range of things there and stuff that's emerged out of research and reading I've done. Every 6 to 12 seconds, we go inward. We go inward to think about what do we think or what do we feel about what the person said. So, we think we're going to remember everything that's said and we don't. All right, we don't remember. We're not recording machines. We remember key bits of information. And I'm sure you've all been in staff meetings where people have heard exactly the same words but walked out with slightly different interpretations. All right, and often we probably think, and I certainly did, they've deliberately not heard, or they deliberately interpreted it in a particular way. And some people may do that, but most people is we just interpret it. So there's intention, impact, and in the middle is interpretation. And we each interpret words slightly differently. All right, and that's the challenge around all of this. How do we get a shared understanding of what's useful or important? How do we close the gap around that? So linked to that interpretation, you often hear phrases or say phrases, it's common sense to do this, or it's common sense. But I always say the trouble with common sense, it's not common. All right, it isn't. There's only 4 of us in here, but each of us will have a slightly different interpretation of what is common sense. And it was Einstein, I think, who said, common sense is the accumulation of prejudices we get by our mid-20s. So basically, how we've been brought up, what experience we've had, are common sense. And if we haven't had those experiences, it's not common sense. All right, and a bit that emerged the other day, we're having a conversation with a group around professional, because I'm sure you'd all agree, we want people to act in a professional way. But my version or my interpretation of professional might be different to yours, right? Based on how I've been brought up and my experiences going through education. And I often say, it might be okay in some environments to do your emails when you're in a staff meeting. I'm not saying it is or isn't, but in some environments that's okay. In other environments, that will be really frowned upon. And if we never have a conversation about that, people, you're there thinking that person's highly unprofessional. They think they're not doing anything wrong. Yeah, so we can see how we can interpret it in quite different ways. Any other questions at this stage? And I'll sort of dive into bits of information that I think would be useful, but this is very much about me hopefully answering questions that emerge either from the course or from what's happening in the workplace.
I'm not sure.
No, it's all good.
Yeah,
Absolutely, that's fine. You don't have to have. As I say, I'm not going to keep you on here. We'll stay on as long as it's useful. There's no sort of thing you have to stay on as part of this. Just out of interest, and I will sort of share some other bits around conversations. Have any of you done an online course before?
Not in this manner, no.
No. So 2 no, 1 yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Sort of. I've done like teaching on a web,
Right. Yeah.
which is really interesting. It's a completely new world.
Yeah.
But the idea of actually doing it online is, very strange.
So what I'm curious, and there's no right answer to this. I'm curious as to why you said yes. Any of you?
I think for me, like, I guess I'm at a point in my career that I want to start thinking about getting into leadership positions and having, I guess, more of those conversations and some sort of bank of knowledge or confidence behind me of how I approach conversations. I think that's where I kind of came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the same. Similar. I did coaching because I'm from WA. I did coaching in WA.
Yeah.
And like through my last school, and that was I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that sort of like the learning about it, and obviously you can reflect and like transfer that knowledge into the classroom and that sort of thing. So I think it's just good to have.
Yeah. Great. Yolanda, yours the same, is it? Yeah. You have to unmute. Get used to it. No, still can't hear you. Put a message in the chat box if you want. There's a chat thing down the bottom. That's all good. So I saw some nods there, so I'll presume that's it, unless you tell me otherwise as part of it. Looking at it is, and look at what I'm going to go back to that. So I did a lot. I'm not saying you definitely would have done this, Mel, but I worked for a long time with Growth Coaching International. And they do a lot of coaching. There's obviously other providers, but I know they're fairly
that was the one,
well.
Phil Collins?
Say again?
Phil Collins?
No, it sounds like I remember. The only thing I remember Phil Collins is the singer out of Genesis.
No, it's not him.
But I'm a different era to you, so that might be.
He heard the joke enough too.
Yeah, I'm sure he was sick to death of it. Yeah. I thought there's a very commonality around coaching. And I'd say I think it's a great answer, but certainly in Queensland, it was being pushed, and I deliberately say the word pushed, as the answer. All right, so just coach people. No matter what they do, just coach them, you'll be all right. And I used to think, it's not quite as simple as that. All right, it rarely is, unfortunately. We all want the answer, and there isn't. There's loads of answers. And this is about trying to work out what do I think is the best answer, or even better, ask them. All right, when they've got a shared understanding of what is coaching, what is mentoring, what is, times I just want advice, tell me what to do. Then I think a great question to ask them is, what do you want? What outcome are you looking for from our conversation? And it's one of those, I think I wish I'd had this years ago, because I used to be a school principal over 15 years ago now. But, again, we got so busy that we just sort of, best intentions, I made up my mind what they wanted out of the conversation. It's well-intentioned generally. What do I think they want? And so I just generally told them. I might have asked them questions, hopefully. But if we give them the control, then it's more like to go, well, the conversation. Because sometimes people just want to be told. All right, and that's okay. If that's all they ever want to do, I push back a bit. So why might I say, if they only ever just tell me the answer, Nick, just tell me the answer. Why might I suggest it's good to push back occasionally?
It's a quick fix.
Yeah. Look, it's quick fix for them and it's quick fix for us. So you get quite lured into, let's just tell them. It's quicker, particularly if they ask, give me permission.
They want it, yeah.
All right. But so why wouldn't we? Because it's absolutely time poor. So why wouldn't we just fix it?
It's not sustainable. I guess it's not a sustainable practice. If you're continuing to tell people how to do something, then they're not solving the problem of it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So one is, it's quick in the moment, but they generally keep coming back. Mm-hmm. So over time, it probably takes you more time than actually taking a little bit of time here and now. And as you say, it's not growing and developing them. And it's trying to work out, when is it the time to tell them? When is it the time to coach? When is it time to mentor? And again, it's not easy. And in any one conversation, you might do all of those, all of those things. And that's the nuances of it. And I'm deliberately going to just spend a little bit of time unpacking coaching and mentoring. Again, this is primarily Queensland, but I think it's across Australia as well, because I think the word coach was used often when people were in mentoring positions. And the reason I say that, literacy coaches, numeracy coaches, IT coaches, whatever it is, generally they are mentors. They're people with lots of knowledge in that space. And it almost became, I think, not deliberately, coaching was good, mentoring was bad. And people sort of think, we've got to call it coaching. We're actually mentoring is a great value. So the way I define the difference is, so they're both down the end of asking rather than telling, but mentoring sort of in the middle. So if I want to mentor, I want someone with knowledge and experience around what I want to be mentored in. Okay, not everyone agrees with this definition, but a lot of people do, particularly in Australia. In America, they often flip it. They would call mentors someone who I would call a coach, and they would call coaches someone who I would see as a mentor. But a mentor has knowledge or experience they share. Whereas a coach they may have that, but you don't need that. Okay, it's fundamentally about listening and asking good questions. And I've written a couple of pieces recently because it sounds really simple. That's all you've got to do: listen and ask good questions. But amazing how hard that is for us as humans. All right, generally, and I'll unpack it briefly why I think that's really hard for us. But because it sounds simple, but it's not easy, and that's a useful phrase to think about as part of that. And just to make it even more complicated, but that's the reality of it. I think the most effective mentors adopt a coaching approach. What do you think I mean by that? So why might I suggest the best mentors adopt a coaching approach to their mentoring?
Maybe it's sort of in the way that, you don't know your way is the best way, but you kind of work with the people around you.
Absolutely. There's not a single right answer. Yeah, that's absolutely one. What else might it be?
Oh, quite an on-the-spot question.
Yeah, absolutely. Just say I don't know. That's all good. You don't have to know.
I guess it's like with what Kelly said, it's like, I don't know the answer. I can't actually solve your problem, but together we will get through it.
Yeah. Some of it absolutely is the position the mentor takes up. And it's simply how I describe it is the best mentors ask lots of questions. Right. So they ask questions before they go into, here is what I think you should work on. Here is some ways of working on it. So the more we can ask questions, the better. Thank you, Lando. I'm just having a quick look at your message while I do it. Yeah, I look at it, and I would absolutely, mentoring is about relationship, but I also suggest coaching is, and even advice giving. It's more likely to hit its mark if there's a trusting, respectful relationship. All right, I deliberately picked those words. So liking someone is nice, all right, but that's a bonus. You don't need to like someone. You need to trust them and you need to respect them, don't you? Is my view for any relationship, any conversational relationship to go well. All right, so what's my relationship? And again, an interesting thing from the research is, just have a guess. How long do you think it makes you decide whether you trust or don't trust someone? Not deep trust or deep distrust, but how long do you think it takes for your brain to decide, yes, I trust or I don't trust?
20 seconds.
It's about less than a second, they reckon.
Wow.
A bit scary, isn't it? So you see someone and your brain quickly goes, trust or don't trust.
Yeah.
And then even scarier, what it does, it seeks out information to reinforce your judgment. Look, we're hardwired to make judgments of people. But I always think you can't stop it doing that, but knowing it does that, then you can be a bit more curious. And that's not the answer, but we all know we should be non-judgmental, don't we? We all know it's not a good thing, but humans, we're hardwired to make judgments. Yeah, good, okay, not so good. That's the same with kids. We make judgments about people and kids all the time. And we can't stop that happening, but I always say, all right, our brain is designed to reinforce our view. So I need to look a bit harder. So someone I put in the not good bucket, so to speak, There will be times when they'll be doing exactly what I want them to do or exactly what I think they should do. I'm just less likely to notice it. Bit scary, isn't it? And the same with people who are in the, I put in the good space. At times they won't be doing what they should be doing or what I want them to do. We're human beings. They might be doing that more of the time, and these people might be doing the wrong thing more of the time. But we have to get better at trying to deliberate. And it doesn't matter so much about people at this end, because we're generally positive and we think well of them. I think these things are most important when we put people into the not so good bucket. All right, knowing there's bits I'm missing about this person that are positive, that'll help me and potentially that help them have a trusting relationship. So I might never like them. I know that sounds blunt, but it might never like them. They might never like me. But how do I get to a professional, productive relationship with this person? Because that's what we want and need in schools, isn't it? Likes a bonus. Great if you get on with everyone. But at the end of the day, that's not the most important bit. The most important bit is we can work professionally, productively with people. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it is about that. So knowing that my brain will cut out loads of information. All right. It's worth going on to good old YouTube at some stage and just, I'm not going to say any more about it, and you might have seen it. Just put the, I'll go and have a quick search while we're talking how to search it, because I don't want to give it away, but it's well worth watching. I'll see if I can't multitask, because I'm a male, but also because humans can't multitask well anyway. That's my excuse. I'll have to stop for a minute, otherwise I won't do either thing very well. That's what happens. All right, no, that still hasn't worked, so I'll have a look in a minute. But anyway, I might not do it now. I might. Yeah, I'll do it, see if that comes up. Yeah. So I'm just going to send you a link. You don't have to watch it now. You can just, I think it's the right one anyway. I'm just going to put a link in the chat box. You can open it and then it obviously will, where is it? There it is. The risk is it'll start playing, so you'll need to pause it if you click on it. Otherwise, we'll all be watching it. Yeah, it only lasts a minute and a half, but it's well worth watching. All right, and I'm not going to say any more about it other than that. All right, so
I've seen this, and it's so funny.
Yeah. And if you haven't seen it, cool, it's worth watching. His name's gone. It'll come back to me. There's a person who does a lot of work around this. Yeah. So it's well worth it. That's about 80 seconds. That's all.
I showed it to the kids and they loved it. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah. I've seen that one as well. It's very
have you? Yeah. So I'll find the person who's done lots of other things around it. Here's one you can stick in YouTube afterward. The changing color card trick, it's called. Changing color card trick. So you're sort of slightly ahead of the game if you've seen that.
Yeah.
But I'll still be interested to know if you notice everything. All right. So there's only one person ever. I'm not showing it to thousands, but I must be up to a couple of hundred now. One person who's ever noticed everything.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't there and there's the one where the guy, the drama, where the murder mystery version.
Oh, there's all sorts. There are. I've seen it when you're talking to someone and someone walks in between you with a plank of wood or a bit of wood, and they change the person, and people don't notice they've changed the person. All right. Our brain cuts out the idea of the reason for sharing those is, as you can guess, our brain deliberately works out what it thinks is important for us.
Yeah.
All right. So we have about 1 million bits of information hitting our body or hitting our brain in any 1 minute. If we noticed everything, we go start raving mad. It'd be horrific. Yeah. Because there's so much information. You'll start to notice these because I mentioned them, what you're sitting on, the clothes you're wearing, and things like that. We generally don't notice them unless they're uncomfortable, because then we have to do something about it. But generally our brain is if our brain, particularly sitting, if our brain wasn't working, we'd fall off. It has to do something. There's muscles have to be switched on to make that happen. We don't think about it. Breathing, we don't think about breathing most of the time, unless we're underwater. I'm thinking about when's my next breath. And I heard it shared that, we take about 20,000 breaths a day. And the challenge was, it's a bit of a, being present was how many of those do you notice? It's quite interesting, isn't it? So because we are either future or past focused. And it's not about trying to notice all of the breasts. That would be very boring and not much benefit, but taking time every so often to be present to how we are. And that's the bit is around the conversations. This isn't about trying to bring out whatever learning hopefully emerges from the online courses into every conversation you do. Far too hard work. Be exhausted to try and do that. But every so often, either there's a person I'm not sort of getting on with so well. How am I to draw out? How am I to use some of these strategies with that person to help develop the relationship? To either say it's either for planning a conversation you're going to have, or for reflecting on a conversation that didn't go well. What happened in that conversation that maybe I can learn from to make it less likely to happen next time? Does that make sense? Yeah, it's far too hard to try and do it for all conversations. I'm sure you wouldn't, but you'd soon get bored and soon get fed up with doing it. So, okay, so I'll throw a challenge out to you over the next sort of tomorrow. It might be the next week, but it might be tomorrow. Think of a conversation you're going to have that might be worth, okay, just thinking really deliberately about, where does the conversation go? What do I do in the conversation? What does the other person do in the conversation? Or it might be a conversation you've had recently that didn't go well. And then you go back, okay, what happened in that conversation? And I'd encourage you to, particularly if it's a post-mortem, so it's about a conversation that didn't go well, think about what went well in it as well as what didn't go well in it. All right. So I suggest that no matter how bad a conversation went, there will be some elements we do well. But we're hardwired to notice what doesn't go well much more than we are that what goes well. Okay. And so be kind to yourself. I always say that we're human beings. So you've got to be kind to yourself about what emerges out of that. So any thoughts? So I'm going to ask you a question. What's clear or any questions at this stage? A no's all good. You don't have to.
It's sort of like common sense, but then also common sense isn't so common at the same time. It's just really what we kind of know.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've got all of these skills. It's not as though you've come to this without any of these skills. What I say, it's about shining the spotlight on certain skills for brief periods of time. And that's where I'm saying it's worth thinking about, because like any of these, we get better at whatever it is by practicing it, because they are skills. All right. They are, we all are given a certain amount of skills around listening and asking questions, but we can all improve. All right. Even though really the job of the teacher is to ask questions and listen in many ways, isn't it? If you think about it, in many ways it's part of the job, but in Crete, we can all get better at them. The different types of listening that we can do. How do we ask better questions? So here's a question for you. How do you know you've asked a good question?
Maybe that they have to stop and think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great indicator. They go, So I'm quite pleased because that all of you went, ooh. So that could have been I'm suggesting that it was quite a useful question in that everyone went, ooh. Right, it stops and makes us think. If you can just go bang like that, we're not having to think, are we? If we can answer it really quickly. The other thing is sometimes people say, good question.
Yeah.
All right, there's not a single answer, but what we want to do, good questions stimulate thinking.
Yeah.
All right. And again, depends on, particularly if we're in coach or mentor mode. If we're in teacher mode, sometimes our questions are testing understanding, aren't they? Quite rightly so. Do the kids understand whatever I've just taught them? We're asking questions to check that. And that's totally appropriate. All right. But interactions, some stages are good to check. We can check for understanding and get them to think. So a couple of things, again, to share around that might be helpful, beneficial. Do you know what the average, and this was done in America, so I don't know how accurate or not is in Australia, the average wait time between a teacher asking a question and then waiting for an answer before they say something?
1.5 minutes.
I'd go like 33 seconds.
It's about 2 seconds, unfortunately. And that's what I'm saying. It's generalization. But that's because there's a real need to get through a lot of content at times, isn't there? And how do you balance that? But I always say the challenge I throw out, it absolutely is a challenge. I don't envy trying to do so much with so little time. But what are we trying to encourage? Are we trying to do more teaching, or are we trying to encourage more learning? And that's hard, isn't it? I know what you want to do.
Ideal.
Yeah. The learning happens when we give the silence, when we let them think. Whereas we're teaching, aren't we? We're telling them things. And there's a balance. It depends on the age of the kids, the ability of the kids. So again, not that teaching is a bad thing, but again, trying to get the balance right. And the research also said the balance of teacher questions to student questions was massively swayed to teachers. So how often did we ask? So what questions might we ask here, or whatever else it is? And one of the again, I'm cautious about naming this, but one of the best questions, it's been called the learning question, is what's clearer? All right. So in relation to coaching, that's where it came from. What's clearer? So virtually always I try and end a coaching type of conversation with what's clearer. So what might be the benefit of that as a question?
I guess they are reiterating or consolidating their skills by repeating it back to you and putting it in their own format or words.
Yeah. What else?
Well, as a as a teacher, we're meant to communicate. We're going to find out how we're doing it better, like which is the best way for them to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, you get some great feedback, won't you, in terms of that? And actually by asking that question, as long as they're listening, they go inward and they reflect on what's just occurred. Yeah. And by doing that, it's more likely to stick.
Yeah.
Like, I think, I'm teaching adults now rather than teaching kids, but I think it'd be useful to ask kids every so often. Don't have to wait to the end of the lesson. All right, what's clearer about what we've done so far? And if it's blank, there's nothing, then we quite clearly know, all right, so there's some bits I need to revisit here. Otherwise, and again, the challenge is one kid's totally got it, a group of kids have got it, some kids have half got it, and some kids haven't got it at all. Yeah. Absolutely, that, I understand the challenge of that, but it might give you a sense of the balance where we're at in relation to that, but actually it makes them process it. And you deliberately framed as what's clearer. All right, rather than is anything clearer? Because it can be yes or no. So what's clearer presupposes something is clearer. All right, and as a human brain, we're hardwired to try and find something that is clearer, even if it's not a lot. We'll desperately try and find something that's clearer. All right, because we want to appear competent. And there's 3 elements to human motivation that can be useful around this. And the middle one is competency. As humans, we want to appear competent. No one wants to appear stupid. They don't. They play class clown, don't they? Kids do, and sometimes adults do. They make jokes about it, but that's because if I don't, I'm going to look like I don't know what I'm on about. So we sort of divert it by making fun of it. But the first one is autonomy, choice. Right, the more choice I get about this, the more motivated I am generally to learn about it. All right, so obviously you can't give the kids free choice about what they're doing all the time. Sometimes you might be able to, and that's great if you can. But actually, choice can be as much as, all right, we need to do this. We can do it now. We can do it, tomorrow. We can do it on Friday or whatever else it is. Yes, and again, so where we can introduce choice, it's great. And the final element is the relationship. Yeah, so it virtually always comes back to the relationship. You'll know kids who this relationship's strong, they try a bit harder because they don't want to let you down as much as they don't want to let themselves down. And it's the same with adults. If I've got a relationship with you, I try a bit harder to make this work. Just while that pops into my head, there's also the benefit of trying to coach them or even mentor them with coaching. If they come up with a choice of what they're going to do, they're a bit more committed to following through with it. Again, if I've chosen it, I want to appear competent. And if it doesn't work, I don't appear quite as competent. Whereas if you told me to do it, I go, it's your fault. It didn't work. I'm a bit less committed. And these are obviously broad generalizations, but you can see how it plays out. Busy environment. What should I do? All right, I tried that. Didn't work. And it's your fault. You've got to tell me something better. Whereas if I come up with it, all right, I better try a bit harder. All right. So in terms of questions, another one that can be useful in terms of, it depends. If someone comes to you for advice, so let me ask you rather than just telling you what I think is. So if someone comes to you for advice, what might you do if you want to try and stay out of just telling them?
Can we discuss this further?
Yeah. Oh, look, there's lots of right answers. There's not a single one. What else might we do? So coming to you, okay, I want to, it's probably not a good example. I know you're good at teaching reading. I want to get better at teaching reading. Tell me what to do.
What have you seen that works well?
Yeah, great. It is just going to questions. Yeah. What do you think? What do you think I do? Or what might I suggest you do even? There's little things like that. And sometimes, and again, partly it's linked to, and we might visit this in another webinar, emotional intelligence, because there's a whole sort of huge bits around that. Yeah, good question, Yolanda. What do you like about my approach? Great. Yeah, absolutely. So it's trying to get them to think rather than just answering. Yeah. But absolutely, sometimes we need to read and think, okay, I'm just going to tell them on this occasion. So how do you work out? Again, I'm deliberately asking you questions here. How do you work out when you tell them and when you ask them a question? What might be some clues?
Maybe their body language as well.
Yeah.
The desperation, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If they're in anxiety, if they're looking stressed, the best thing to do is tell them.
Yeah.
All right. The brain doesn't think when it's in anxiety mode.
Yeah.
All right. And I say the best coaches, the best leaders, the best interactions we have is getting the dance of accountability. It's called challenge and support. When do I challenge them? When do I get them to think? When do I just support them and offer it?
Yeah.
And those bits. And that's that, which you'll do instinctively. But again, what I just throw the challenge out there is the people we put in the not so good, lazy, whatever bucket we might label it, we're less likely to give a considered response, because we're a bit more likely to be apathetic towards them. It's a blunt word, isn't it? But because we get frustrated, they keep coming back to us. For God's sake, they're coming back to us. So we're less empathetic towards them. All right, it's human nature. Knowing that when they come to us, right, trying to not let that get in the way of how I interact with them. Because again, I'm going to throw this out. It's not my quote. I think a few people have claimed it, and it's a good one. If you think you can, if you think they can, or you think they can't, you're probably right. All right. Same with kids. So if we think they can get this, or they think they can do the right things, more likely to do it. All right. There's no guarantees. Obviously, we can't make them into something they're not. But if we think they can't do it, or think they're not likely to do it, the chances are they won't. Yeah. All right. It's a very coaching phrase, unconditional positive regard. All right. It's linked to, and someone who's worth, and I can send you links, and I'd stick it in either in the chat box here if you want more, because that will prompt me to do it, or in the online course, or send me an email. Professor Christian van Nieuwenburg. It's a very interesting spelling, which I'm not sure I'd get right off the top of my head anyway, but a very, very clever manager, and lots around coaching. But he said a while back, a few years back, you should just work with him. If the more I coach people, the more I believe in them. And I thought, yeah, I do actually, because often, not always, but often they do know what to do. Often they do have the answer if we can give them a bit of time to think about it and know when to challenge and when to support. Yeah, so increasing, and people often surprise themselves. I'm sure you've had some of those experiences when they come up with the answer. Where did that come from? I've just come up with a great idea. So why do you think that sometimes emerges in a conversation? So what is it about conversations, coaching, mentoring, whatever, that maybe enable sometimes these aha moments to come about?
So taking the time, like the fact that someone cares and listening, and like the relationship, Yolanda, it's just, it's all of that. So
I think the key bit is what you said first. I'm not saying my answer is, this is the right answer, is the time. It actually slows us down a bit. So there's a solutions focused phrase says that the action is in the interaction. What it means is there's something that takes place between people that is quite magic. And I think some of that is because we get it out of our heads and put it between us to discuss. And by doing that, it slows us down. So there's no way, no matter how fast you can you talk as fast as you can think. So our brains whiz all over the place really quickly, and we're distracted by something and we go off on something else. We're having a conversation with someone slows our thinking down. So I think as it slows down, some things appear that are already there. They're just drowned out by the white noise and everything else we're thinking about, or we get distracted and we've forgotten it. Yeah. So I think there's something about coaching and just taking the time to have the conversations, particularly when there's the relationships there, as you say, that enables things to become clearer to me. So, and that's why, you absolutely can self-coach, and you will do. You achieve things. You don't have to have a conversation with people to achieve things. But I know I've got a colleague over in WA, funnily enough, and who we've had a relationship for many years now through special ed and through coaching. We've got a long-standing agreement. If either of us wants to be coached, we just reach out. And they're ones that are really hard to work out. So they're a bit tricky. And so every so often, it's probably twice a year, if that, right, I need to be coached. And they, just because there's someone there that, don't have to worry about the relationship, that's already really strong. They get how to, because the risk is if you ask some people, they'll give you loads of answers. And generally, we're not looking for that. We're just looking for someone to bounce ideas off at that point. So again, it's, instinctively, you would probably seek those people out. And people might seek you out if you're that sort of a person. All right. So just those opportunities to do that. So it slows down our thinking as part of it. Anything else that's useful to draw on or draw out, or any questions at this stage? I'm trying to think if there's anything else I think that's useful to share at this stage. But
yeah, just sort of getting your head around all of it again, and just trying, where we'll use it realistically in the day and things like that. Yeah.
So on that, you choose to do nothing. Obviously, that's totally your call around what we do. But it's good to take, if you've taken the time, A, to put your hand up to get into the online courses, and B, given up time during week 9 to have this conversation. And I really appreciate, acknowledge that. So for you to get the the best outcome from this, I'd think about what's one small thing I'm going to try. Yeah, it might be I'm just going to be a bit more cognizant around this conversation that I know I'm going to have. Or it might be I'm going to reflect on that conversation about what happened. It might be I'm going to really try to ask questions a bit more. I'm really going to, so there's lots of potential ways you go, but make it really small. All right. And there's a bit of evidence around, because we're expert procrastinators as humans. We find good reasons not to do things. We've got lots of them, haven't we? We're busy. It's week 9. We've got, I'm sure you've got a million things you can be doing. So they make it a laughingly small first step. So a really small thing you're going to do. All right. And again, they say within 48 hours. So that's my challenge to you. Well, I'm going to ask you to have a think, because I want you just to share. Obviously, it's up to you whether you do it or not. But what's some really small thing you might try by the end of Thursday? All right. So it could be, so I'll go through those again, give you a bit of thinking time. So it could be about, I'm going to think about a conversation that didn't go quite as well as I hoped. I'm going to plan and think about how I'd like a particular conversation that's coming up to go, and think about, what sort of position do I maybe adopt around that? It could be, I'm just going to try and ask a few more questions. It could be, I'm going to try out the what's clearer question, to see what happens. You're certainly not going to damage anyone by asking that question. All right. It could be, I'm going to try and listen a bit more deeply to what they say. So if you're going to do one small thing, I'm going to ask you to share. So, and I'll explain why I'm going to ask you to share. So, because there's thinking about it, and I'm making up the numbers here, there's probably 30% chance you'll do it. Telling someone else, I think, at least doubles the odds of it happening. All right. And I encourage you to write it down, because I think that even more increases the odds it will happen. So who's willing to share? Oh, there we go. Thank you, Yolanda. Yolanda's already done it. You've written it down and you've shared it. So that increases your odds. So reflect on past conversation and listen empathetically. Yeah. And so I'm going to throw you a challenge. You don't have to answer this, Yolanda. I'm going to challenge you to, okay, when are you going to actually reflect on it? You don't have to answer that because you're busy. You're very, very busy. So pick out a conversation and say, I'm going to give it 2 minutes, give it longer, but 2 minutes just to think about what happened and what might it be around that person's perspective that maybe I didn't capture, the empathetically bit. Great. So again, I can't help but push back a bit, Yolanda. Sorry, you're in the hot seat here because the word you've used there tonight is great. The bit I'm just going to push back a bit is likely. All right. So what's definitely? So we'll wait. She's going to type in. So I'm presuming this is good news. But if you go off screen, that's cool, Yolanda. I understand if put too much pressure. It is too hard. This is, I'm out of here. Yeah. But that's the bit. So what I'm doing, and it's totally up to you, Yolanda, when you do that, I'm deliberately. Yeah, absolutely. And sleep, having just listened to a podcast today about knowing this, how important sleep is. If you're going to take extra bit of sleep, I'm very happy if that's your first step. All right. So around that, absolutely. But it's noticing. So I do, so because I do so much coaching and I have done, I deliberately thought, all right, push a bit harder. So when is it going to do? And then I picked out likely, because likely gives us a get out. Right. Definitely is a bit, and a good coaching conversation feels a bit uncomfortable because you're committing me to doing something. Yeah. So sleep's good. Absolutely. It wouldn't decry you doing sleep. So you've got loads of other options, Kelly and Mel. So you've got loads of thinking time now. So what's your, and you know how much I'm going to push you now a bit as well. So what's your small step?
I was going to say ask a clearer question, but I think I'm going to do it with kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'll be curious to hear what happens.
Yeah, and I think maybe because we're coming to the end of sort of content, sort of want to know what you did, and but then also take a step further and see why did they say that part? Why is it they found that clear? I don't know. So.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Look, these are little tests, aren't they? We give it a go, see what happens. As I say, it's certainly not going to damage anyone by asking that question. Yeah. And I'd be interested to hear, okay, how kids respond to it in that way. And I'll let Kelly share hers, and I'll share one final question that it can be a great question to ask kids or adults. Yes. But anyway, Kelly, what's yours?
Well, I was sort of combining the what's clearer with the wait time. Same thing as Mel, trying it on the kids because I figure they're the best test guinea pigs.
Much more forgiving.
Yep. And just be conscious of the wait time between their response. Yeah.
Great. So final thing, unless there's any questions, I'll let you go. I really appreciate your time and commitment coming on to this. So there's got to be the right time to use this question, but it is amazing how often people answer this question. So I'll give you the context. So it could have been, I said to any of you, I said, what are you going to do? And you might have said, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Come on, what might, I just don't know. If you did know, what would you do? Nearly always people answer that. So even when they said, I don't know, you just say, but if you did know, what would you do? So if the kids say, I don't know what's clearer, no, let's just presume you do know. What is clearer? What would you say? Look, I can't guarantee it, but you can virtually guarantee they will answer that, be that adults or kids. So I was doing a demo in a workshop not long ago, and it came up, they just happened to say, I don't know, in relation to something else. And I said to them, I'm dead straight face, obviously, I said, so if you did know, what would you do? And literally they answered it. And they didn't even know I'd sort of asked that question because they're thinking. And we debriefed it afterwards, and I said, so there was a question in there that's it sounds bizarre. Why the hell would that work? And someone mentioned it. But it's a great question when you get, I don't know. Kids or staff, all right? Yeah, but if you did know, what would you say? What were you thinking? If you did know what you were thinking, what would you say? Mm-hmm. So again, I'm not saying you should use it, but it can add a bit there. All right, so I've got to finish on a question, So what's clear as a consequence of our conversation tonight?
I don't know. It's,
But if you did know,
you did know. I don't understand.
you can have an opt out there, Mel. Absolutely. It's late. It's week 9.
No, I like the idea of actually having a challenge set for the week is good and it's a good start to
Right.
know what to say.
Yeah.
For yourself.
Cool. Thanks, Yolanda.
Yeah, I think maybe just taking the time to stop and reflect, and like you were saying, be kind to yourself and reflect on those positives as well as those negatives if you're having those conversations.
And again, I'm jumping back, and this isn't the answer, but a way to do that, because again, it's easy to say, I'll stop and take time in your incredibly busy, lives at school, and that is, again, I coach someone around this, but it comes back to that. I'm going to sort of just notice 10 breaths I have. 5 breaths, because in slowing everything down, things will become a bit clearer, or you'll start to notice it. All right, unless there's any other questions, I'm going to let you go, and I really appreciate you turning up tonight. And as I say, I'll let you know, please reach out on via the platform or email, and I'll let you know fairly soon when the next sort of, it'll be about a month we'll do this sort of thing. But please do reach out if you want any other resources or anything else.
Beautiful.
All right. Lovely to see you all.
You too. Thank you, Nick.
See ya.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.